Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another fantabulous episode.
Fantabulous? Is that what we're doing today, Hillary?
We are. It's combining fabulous and fantastic in the same word.
I would say that Kerrin Laz is, by definition, fantabulous.
I would agree. Not only is she like
incredible.
a cool lady, but she's got an incredible wine collection.
Yeah. And if you want to go to the premier wine tasting in Yountville on the strip, go see Kerrin Laz. She'll set you up with the right wine.
And it's all personalized, which makes it even better.
Yes. All to what you like to drink. So enjoy this episode with Kerrin Laz of K Laz Wine.
Woo! Hello, everybody, and we're back for another amazing episode tonight.
We sure are. Hi, Hillary. How are you?
Good. We're all the way almost to the big city. We're in Yountville.
Pretty close. We're here today with Kerrin Laz.
We are a very
and this
special
is
guest.
Very exciting because Kerrin is on my bocce team, the Sand Crabs.
Is that her claim to fame?
I mean, it's my claim to fame to be on her bocce team. And but you actually hatched this plan to do a podcast.
I think Marcus actually helped us.
Yes, that's right.
I think Marcus gets a few glasses of wine and me and other people, and then I just pinpoint them down until I don't let them leave until I get their email. Is actually what happens.
Previous guests are a very big help for us. So, awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Kerrin, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Come attack your tasting room in Yountville.
No, I love it. That's great.
Excited to be
here. You guys
here.
are always welcome.
Thank you.
Always welcome. That's funny you mentioned Marcus. That's because we were at Raymond when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a fun day.
So tonight we have the September 2022 and then September 2014 in honor of your first vintage that you released.
Oh, that's sweet. I love that.
So, for those who may not be or maybe new listeners, we like to read the police log. We like to interview a local wine maker, wine celebrity, wine merchant, and that's what we're doing today. So, remember, it is the podcast that Napa Valley didn't know it needed.
And we still keep providing it.
We still do it.
We're just giving in that
We're
way.
just very giving.
God, you're such a giver.
It's Christmas all year
You
round.
guys are such givers.
So anyway, thanks for joining. But yeah, well, do you want to find is there anything good in this police log?
Yeah, I think so.
Let's start us off, Hill.
So, looking at a 3-year-old boy at noon was briefly reported missing. He was found safe inside his house.
That's always a plus. That's good. Pair of license plates. This is on, what day is this? Thursday, September 1st, 8 in the morning. A pair of license plates were stolen from a car and replaced with 2 other plates. One was confirmed belonging to the stolen car, and the other belonged to a car that might have been stolen.
Oh.
And then there was a possible fire in a trash can. So,
Wow.
a wild
Do you
start
get a
to
lot
September.
of calls for that, being on the fire department? Lots of fiery trash cans?
I've never been to a dumpster fire besides my own life.
I was going to say, besides
Except
the
for
first one.
2020. That was a dumpster fire.
Besides my own life. Oh my gosh. But anyway, I digress. Kerri, you got anything good?
That is funny. That seemed like a busy day, huh? That September day.
It was. Yeah.
So the one thing I noted when we first started looking through this is that it seemed like Sunday was a really busy day on September 25th.
What did you find?
There were just so many calls and there were so many things happening. It was like, what happened on September 25th?
I know.
Was it a football? Like, what happened?
I know what in the valley was going on.
What was going on?
That was Sunday. It was a weekend.
It was a weekend.
But I mean,
It was the start of the
I
Napa
didn't even know
Valley.
that many people lived in St. Helena that had a phone that could call for as many issues as there were that day.
I mean, it's kind of the start of the Napa party season, which I believe is September to October. It's
Harvest was in full swing.
That's
I think
what I was
there
just
were
trying to
a lot
look at my
of
calendar.
stress.
I'm like, was there-
Were people
I don't know. I know there was that homecoming?
No.
Did you hear about the homecoming hubbub?
No, what happened?
That was wild. So, well, first of all, the quarterback, I have not been to a football game for 20 years.
Thank you for
Let me just
prefacing that.
start that.
Okay.
You don't want to lie and say you go to every single
I have
one.
not.
No, that's a good
Unfortunately
disclaimer.
not. But for 20 years, Richard Hoppy and I decided to go, and we're there and watched. It was a wild night. The poor quarterback broke his ankle, and then about a half hour later, there was one kid that choked out another kid. He fell to the ground. He broke his eye sort of orbital socket, you know.
Okay.
He didn't break
He
his
broke his eye.
I was like, you got a lot of
He broke
bones.
his face, and then the kid that did the choking and made it pass out, he ran away, and the cops had to tackle him, and he also broke his face. We had like 2 broken faces. We had a broken ankle.
This was in one game at the homecoming.
One game at
Yeah.
homecoming. It was nuts. It caused quite a bit. Of,
I will say I
of a-
made an appearance at the next football game because I'd heard all this skedaddle, and I'm like, I missed out on this
And?
pride. It was pretty dull.
Nothing happened. No
Nothing
broken
happened. There
bones.
weren't a lot of people. I was
No
like,
broken eyes.
I
No.
missed the whole excitement.
Oh my god! So maybe it's good you live in Yountville, Kerrin.
Wow.
Does Yountville get a little wild?
No, nothing like that. You know, I think it's so funny. Cause like, you know, the population of Yountville, I believe, it's close to probably. It might be almost 6,000 residents now, but that takes into consideration the veterans home. So once you know, excluding that, we're probably about maybe like, and don't quote me on this, but we're probably about maybe 4,000 residents.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So, and of those 4,000 residents, probably 3,995 of us go to sleep at like 10. Restaurants are closed by 10. And we were just talking earlier how much we miss Ponchas. That would have been the only place that would have been open a little bit later. But yeah, no. It's sleepy, but I'm okay with that.
It's good.
Yeah.
Tell us about your journey here, because you were on the East Coast.
Yes, I was on the East Coast. Yep. No, it's been a great ride. And, I always say this, I loved growing up on the East Coast, and I loved growing up in New York. I went to school in North Carolina. I lived in D.C. before I moved out here. And I'll always, I just love going back, seeing friends and family on the East Coast. But I've been out here now for a while, and I've actually been out here longer than I've been anywhere else since, growing up in New York, if that makes sense. So I've been out here since the end of 2006, and it's, when I first moved out here, and I came from DC directly from, I was living in DC before I moved out here, and I was like, it's so close to the city, and I'm gonna be in San Francisco, and I was living in Georgetown, which is like this super cool part of DC, so it definitely had a neighborhood feel, but it was really easy access to get into.
It's right there.
Yeah, I mean, it was like in the heart of our capital, and so when I moved out here, I'm like, I'll be in San Francisco a lot because it's really close, and the valley's a little quiet, and I had been, as I told you guys earlier, I had been traveling out here for work for, a couple of years before moving out, and once I got out here, it was like, I'm like, San Francisco seems kind of far away, and I was traveling a bit for work, quite a bit for work, back to the East Coast and stuff, so it was nice because I continually got kind of that city, kind of feel that I liked, and then I got the East Coast feel that I liked. And then I would come back, and this was like my landing spot. Like, this was my home base, which was a place where I'm like, Yountville, to be coming back to Yountville is a pretty special place to come back to, in the valley. And that's pretty cool. And then as I got older, not that old, but as I got older, in the last couple of years, as I got older, no, but I was, it became this like awesome place to come back to, and now I love it, and now I'm like, nah, I'm good, like I can stay put, and I'm like, what we were talking about earlier, I'm like, you know what, I'm like, I get up early in the morning, like, my duration of my day starts earlier, and it just ends a little bit earlier, so everything kind of just moved around, but I love living in Yountville. I've lived here. This is the only place I've lived since moving out. And, I could have lived anywhere. I would have been happy in Calistoga. I would have been happy in Napa, St. Helena. I had friends throughout the valley. It would have been an easy move for me. And it just happened to be Yountville. So,
nice.
Yeah.
So what were you doing when you were traveling for work? Was that when you worked for Dean Deluca?
Yeah, so when I was at Dean and Deluca, I was traveling mainly to work with finance and I call it kind of the non-creative component to our business, which was basically finance and HR, which was based in Wichita, Kansas. So I was in Kansas quite a bit. Our warehouse for everything but wine was based in Kansas, and then our wine warehouse was based down in Napa. But then I was also visiting the stores quite a bit on the East Coast. So I was continually visiting stores, and then as we expanded internationally, I was working a little bit more internationally with our licensees. So And then I was traveling a lot. We started kind of we expanded the DTC model, the direct-to-consumer model, basically out of the recession of 2007, 2008. And that's when we were traveling, just like all the time. And we were basically taking the Dean and Deluca concept and like the recession really, it changed business models, and it was and it's the same thing with the pandemic. It's like, how do you adapt and how do we kind of evolve, and it makes or breaks businesses. And so for us, Highway 29, there was nobody on the roads in 2007, 2008. Nobody was coming out here for the optics of not coming out, or just because for the finances of not being able to come out. So we said, hey, look, we're going to bring Dean and Deluca to you. Like, you might not be coming out to California for whatever reason, but we'll bring, the cheese and charcuterie, we'll overnight, we'll ship the wines. This is on us, big gamble. But I had to keep my sales team employed. And I said, the one thing I asked, bring 5-10 guys to the table that are as into wine as you. And it was incredible because it created this loyalty with our mailing list, but it also created incredible buying power. And, states allocations were given to us because, New York died during the recession. Nobody was going to Vegas. So we were taking state allocations. It was a handshake deal. And I basically said, look, here's the deal. As we get out of this, we will have that need for that, for that wine. Whatever you do, whatever you give to New York, great. Whatever you give to Vegas, great. But like, this is what we're going to need going forward. Every winery stayed true to it. So, but that definitely got us traveling to all corners of the country for like years, and it continued, which has been cool, and it's continued ever since, even with my company. So,
nice.
Yeah.
A great way to capitalize on a lousy situation.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like a jump to what we did with COVID, like with all the virtual
100%,
tastings and the
yeah.
So,
mailing and the...
did you use the lessons you learned there in your own business during COVID?
So when, I'm going to knock on, I'm a big, like, I like get super, I'm like, I have to knock on wood a couple times. But when the pandemic started, this is so random, but I was visiting a friend who was an expat who was working for Microsoft in China when SARS hit. And SARS was in 2003. And my parents were like, they're like, I'm sorry, you're going where? And I'm like, I'm going to visit my friend Adam, who I was dating at the time. And I said, I'm going to visit Adam, and he lives in Shanghai. And they're like, okay. And they're like, but there's, so there seems to be this thing starting called SARS. Like, what are your thoughts about that? And I was like, literally like fresh out of college. I'm like, no, it's totally fine. I'm like, I'm sure it's not a problem. So off I go to China, and SARS was really happening when in 2003 of spring. And I watched, it was incredible. Like, I landed into Shanghai. I'm in Shanghai, and I watched that city just shut down. It was like there were 1 billion people, and then there was nobody there. And I'm like, where did everyone go? But to the outside world, the media was like, nope, everything's like under control. We got it. Like China, like no issues. And I'm watching Beijing shut down. I'm like, it was unbelievable. So then fast forward in December of 2019, it was below the line. I think it was like in WAPO or in Washington Post. And it basically, there was this blurb about COVID. And I forwarded it to my friend Adam, and I said, is this going to be the next SARS? Jokingly, right? Fast forward, here we are until like February, March. I'm like, no, this is actually getting real, and it's a bigger problem. Because SARS was really kind of contained into Asia. It never really got, to the Western parts. And I was like, okay, this is actually bigger than SARS. And so I just thought to myself, I'm like, we have to literally take our marketing calendar, and we have to take our sales calendar, and we just have to push everything earlier. So like we pushed our wine clubs 2 weeks out earlier. We pushed, Screaming Eagle's a great partner with us. We pushed our Screaming Eagle release out 2 weeks earlier. We pushed everything. So when we went into, the shelter in place, we had already shipped the wine. It was, everything was out because we had like kind of not premature, but kind of premeditated that earlier. So we were really lucky from a cash flow perspective. But, we go into shelter in place, and Barrett, my GM, asks me, what do you think about doing these virtual tastings? And I was like, ooh, I don't know. Like, it doesn't sound very interesting. Like, what we're going to like get on a call and like, oh, like this wine's like, like who cares? Like no one's going to want to listen to us. And I got a phone call, and it was like a cold call from a Salesforce exec who, unbeknownst to me, we had hosted for a tasting during their sales dream force thing that they do, the big executive conference in San Francisco, and they had come up and we had hosted them for a tasting, and he basically said, we want to retain you to host virtual tastings for Salesforce. And I was like, okay, I guess we're going to start doing virtual tastings then. Yeah, we are in the Salesforce. We're in the virtual tasting business. So they were a huge support for us. We wound up, and that was like its own entity. We wound up doing, it was close to 100 virtual tastings just for Salesforce alone.
And that's just all their employees. They just wanted to.
It was mainly for their. It was. I kind of jokingly said, I think we're the new Del Frisco's for companies. Like here I am, I'm gonna like wine and dine you. I was like, but you couldn't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. So then they're like, oh, we'll do a K Laz, virtual tasting. So we were hosting tastings mainly for Salesforce, and then tech kind of talks to tech, and then the next thing I know, I got a call from Zoom, and we're still hosting events for Zoom. So it might be like prospective clients, existing clients, team building. Salesforce is a big company, so you got 60,000 employees there, and so they keep you busy. But it was incredible, and it was if K Laz had been newer, and at that time in 2020, I started the business in 2015, end of 15. If K Laz had been a year old, I don't know if it would have made it, to be honest. It was one of these things we'll make it, it'll work or we won't work. It's really simple. You'll go out of business or you'll stay in business. So we were really fortunate.
And you did everything from, so they would say, we want to do this kind of tasting. You'd come up with a plan, ship all the wines out to them.
Yeah, so, there was talk, and I think initially they asked us, do you split bottles? Because I think there were some wineries that were starting to do virtual tastings where they're like, okay, we'll ship you like a test tube, like an ounce or 2 ounces of each wine. And there was a little part of me that was like, that just seems like a lot of work. But second, but I was also like, it's screwing with the wine. Yeah. And so I used the and I'm not saying that was the scapegoat, but I'm like, I'm not going to break apart a bottle of wine, ship it to you, and cross my fingers that it tastes good when you get it. I have no idea how that's going to play out. I don't know how, I don't know how it's going to kind of affect the bottles. So I said no. I was like, it's full bottles. The wines are of quality. You can drink them for the next week. You don't have to worry about it. So we just ship bottles. And what was interesting is that for compliance purposes, within their company, they can only gift so much out from a dollar perspective. So for better or for worse, K Laz, when I started the company, I was like, I don't want to be I was about to say a bad word, but I was like, I don't want to be the person who's only doing high end. But for better or for worse, what I was known for when I was with Dean and Deluca was high end. And one of the things that, Leslie Rudd, and I said to him, who used to own Dean and Deluca, was a huge mentor to me. And I just said, you have to know your audience, and you can't be everything for everyone. So if you're this, you just have to be this, And so with Dean and Deluca, it just tended to be high end, but it wasn't to say that we weren't, we would have killer wines that were $20-$30, but it wasn't our mantra, but we would have them, So when I started K Laz, I'm like, we're not going to just do tastings that are crazy expensive. We're going to have great tastings where the average bottle price point might be $20-$30. It just, what we are more known for tends to be the higher end. But it was interesting because with the compliance for these companies, the average bottle price that we probably sell is about $2.75 a bottle. But for these kits and for the tastings, they're like, okay, so we need to be at $100 for 3 bottles of wine. So it was okay, so we're literally, and it just changed the dynamic, and it was fine though, because it was there are great wines that you can find at that price point. It's not oh, I don't know what to do, but it was a different kind of, it was a different offering that we were kind of getting into, which was kind of cool. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of prices of things,
let's hear it, Bill.
At 12 minutes after midnight, the manager of a Spring Street restaurant reported a problem with a customer who couldn't pay her bill. She said she was from Ireland and was trying to convince the manager to keep one of her identification cards until she returned the next day to pay her bill. Police arrested the 24-year-old Forest Lake woman on 2 warrants from Orange County on suspicion of defrauding an innkeeper or restaurateur in possession of marijuana.
She was going ham.
But what year was that?
This was 2014.
Okay, that was in 14.
You couldn't just Venmo anyone back then.
No. Well, you can't Venmo restaurants now.
I'm sure you can.
Do you think it was a little aggressive to bring the police in on that?
I think. I mean,
and then
I would probably take someone at their word. If they're like, "Here's my ID. I'll come back and get it." I'd be like, okay.
Well, how much was the bill again?
It didn't say. It just said couldn't pay her. Well, Spring Street Restaurant.
Oh, that's where Goose and Gander.
So
is
probably
now.
Martini House. Would that have been 14?
Oh, that was Goose
Oh,
and
that
Gander.
was definitely
Definitely
Martini House.
Goose and Gander.
But was
I'm
it?
trying to think.
Oh.
14. No, I think
It
Goose
might
had
have
just
still been
opened.
Martini House or Goose and Gander. Anyway, maybe that's what.
So
put
then
them
they
out of
call the
business.
police, and then the police come, and then it turns out she has 2 warrant. Well, that's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
Sucks to be you.
But it says she's from Forest
That's like
Lake.
jaywalking.
But
You get caught, and it
she-
turns out you're like freaking out, like warrants out in multiple states for like some bad thing.
Is she
Like,
faking an
Jesus.
Irish accent though? That's the best part. She's claiming she's from Ireland, and they're like, actually, she's from Orange County.
I know a couple people that could have done that actually. No, I'm just kidding. That's
Where would you pretend to be from? I mean, if you were a fugitive from the law.
I would probably, I wouldn't go on the Irish, although, no, I wouldn't go on the Irish. I could try, but then I think that would probably get me off right away. I'm like, my name's kind of Irish, because you know Kerri's
Yeah,
Irish.
Kerri.
I used to always say that. I'm like, I'm part Irish. My name's Irish.
It's like the butter.
Yeah.
There you go.
Exactly.
What would you be?
Oh man. I don't know.
I think my accent would change as I had a few glasses of wine.
I can just start throwing my hands up and talking like an Italian. Bippity boppity boopity boppity.
Yeah.
They're like, you're definitely arrested. They're like, just because that just sounded awful, you're just...
Just appropriate our
Yeah.
culture. Or you could just deny everything, like this man decided to do on Wednesday, September 14th at 15:51. Non-injury hit and run on Main Street. The other driver refused to pull over and just kept saying no.
Succinct.
Yeah.
Just, no, I'm not going to pull over.
Do you want to hear about some real crime?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Wednesday, September 3rd, 2014. Two armed men with handgun robbed a
With handgun?
With handgun, singular.
Singular handgun.
Robbed a jewelry store in the 1300 block of Main Street. Police found their car abandoned on Pine Street. Local schools and library were on lockdown while police searched unsuccessfully for the men. While responding to the scene, the police chief was involved in a 2-car accident on Main Street Adams that had knocked down the traffic signal. No one was injured.
That's the best story ever. I feel bad. I don't know who that police chief was, but she wasn't around for very much longer.
You do know.
Quite embarrassing. I mean, I don't know who she was, but I know it was a quick.
I
Anyway.
remember that actually
Yeah.
happening because I think there were alerts coming off on our cell phones like, Main Street shut down.
Yeah.
Like, don't go near it. I remember that.
That's wild. And they found them, I think.
But
think
it wasn't
they-
the car thing the whole part of it?
Yeah, they switched
Yeah.
cars, and there was
And
a.
then they had done the car thing as a
What was the
distraction.
what place got robbed? Was it Palladium?
I thought it was Palladium actually.
Palladium. Yeah, I think it was. But yeah, they got off. They made it with a lot of stuff. I think they got caught though. I don't know. We'll get back to you on the next episode with the rest of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to follow up on that.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
But anyway, no one got hurt.
Coming soon, what
Yeah,
happened?
exactly. From
What was the end
2014.
result of that 2014 incident?
If anyone knows, please.
Please write us.
Do we have any eyewitnesses?
And if there are any eyewitnesses listening,
Well, this
Come
brings us to the
forward.
next point. We still need to interview the police chief of St. Helena because Chris Hartley, who's the current police chief, was on the force back then. He's been on for the last
He would know.
25
Yeah.
years.
he knows.
So he knows the details.
He needs to check in.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
why don't we put some effort in? By we, I mean you, Hillary.
I will, because I have nothing going on in my
She's
day.
so on it.
You're right.
She's on it.
I
She's
will.
on it.
Hillary does all of the work for these. I literally am just the pretty face.
She's like, okay, I'll put that on the list.
I
Call
will.
police chief.
I
get
will.
him- Get the deal.
I mean, it would be kind of cool to go into the police station and we should do a ride along.
Oh God.
oh boy.
That's not as exciting for you because you get to drive the fire trucks, but some of us just have to drive their normal cars every day and dream of ones with lights.
Perfect.
You should do. Can't she go on a?
Yeah, you can go right along. Sure.
For the fire department?
Yeah.
Wow. I wish people could see your
Everyone
face
just heard that.
because you look very concerned as you agreed to
No,
that.
that's real.
No, Hillary's done plenty of ride-alongs, especially with the St. Helena Fire Department.
I have, but normally they're just picking me up from Charter Oak and taking me to my house.
That's like the Uber of
Yeah.
St. Helena.
Yeah.
That's right. That's great. Yeah.
But we can only go on fire, so we can't go on medical calls because I'm not trying to take
No,
responsibility.
you don't. You can't legally.
So,
So
Speaking of-
just fires.
just fire.
Just something light.
Yeah. Just give me a call when it's a trash can on fire. That one I think I can handle.
A dumpster fire.
Dumpster
Yes.
fire.
Lots of practice.
Just dumpster fires.
Yeah. That's all I want.
Well, speaking of something that's opposite of a dumpster fire, what are we drinking tonight?
What are we drinking? Out of which glass? Oh, out of the white
The
wine.
Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh, the shared notes. So, yes. You love.
Love it.
Are we loving this?
Love it.
I think as it warms up, this is the funny thing, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist when it comes to wine, but I do have this thought that you go to a restaurant and you get you see a wine by the glass that you like, and it's a white, and you're like, I totally want this. So you get it, and it tastes great, but it's really cold. And as it warms up, you're like, this is less great. And then the next thing you know, like by the third glass, you're like, it's totally falling apart. And like, this is awful. So oftentimes I think when whites are really cold, while you don't get a lot of complexity, or you might not get a lot of the layers of the wine, it tastes okay. And then as the wine warms up, if it's well made, it gets better. And if it's not well made, it gets worse.
So people can hide
Right?
flaws with cold.
Yes. Yes. It's like it's a flaw hider.
That's why we cool people off after you code them.
It's just like that.
Good job.
Also, that's a hider too.
Yeah.
So many hiders in our industry. So, but what I like about this wine, as it's warming up in the glass, is how I like it. And it gets better and better as it gets warmed up. So Shared Notes, what we're tasting, Russian River Valley. Cool project with Jeff Pisoni and his wife, Bibiana Gonzalez-Rav, who's now Bibiana Pisoni. And they focus on Sauvignon Blanc only. So they make two different types of Sauvignon Blanc. We're tasting kind of that Bordeaux style blend, which has a pretty decent 25 or whatever percent of Semillon and Sauvignon Blanc. And then they do a Loire style SB, which is also really good. It just happens to be that we like this vintage. So it's, I don't even know if it's 2021 probably. 2021, 20% Semillon. So it's Ritchie Vineyard for the SB and Merino Vineyard for the Semillon, and it's basically, they're making about 6 or 7 barrels of it. And first vintage for them was 2012. So the idea was neither of their wines that they work with are Sauvignon Blanc, and they wanted to produce Sauvignon Blanc, which tends to be, some of the best whites, coming from Bordeaux are Sauvignon Blanc. So they last forever. You go back, you taste like a white Bordeaux that's 20 years old. You're like, how can this be good? Or even like there was it was so funny. I went to a dinner, and this was crazy. I'll never forget this. My friend Dan Ha and his wife, they were making like Vietnamese food, and my friend Jamie Leahy. I'm like throwing out these names, but it was a killer dinner. Jamie Leahy used to live here. He and his wife at the time, Liz, brought a bottle of 2004 Lale, Georgia Sauvignon Blanc, which is like the high-end kind of Sauvignon Blanc that Robin Lale was doing, that Fleet Malcolm made. And I'm like, there is no way this wine's going to be good. It was an 04 Sauvignon Blanc, and we were probably drinking it. It was probably like 8 years old, 9 years old at the time. And I'm like, I don't know about that one. And I was like, I'll drink this, and then we'll go back to that. And it was one of the best wines of the night.
Wow.
And that was a 9+-year-old Sauvignon Blanc from Napa Valley. And I was like, that is incredible. Wow. So, yeah, I think great Sauvignon Blancs, they really do evolve in the bottle, and they get better and better. And I think this wine is drinking really well, but it's young. And I do think that this has the legs. Like, I think it will continue to get better and better. And I think I'd love to have this wine like 5-6 years from now.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Fresh and smells
Or we can just drink it and then, just think about it. And then 6 years we'll drink a different vintage. But yeah, but I think it's incredible to taste some of these whites, and definitely like Chards too, Chardonnays. I mean, it's great to see these wines just getting better and better. And drinking like red wines where, you can lay them down and they get, more interesting, and they evolve in the bottle as time goes on. It's nice.
So how did you get into wine from going from the kind of HR, the marketing world to boom, right into wine?
So when I started with Dean and Deluca, I started as, I had no experience. And I started as the buyer of the Georgetown store in D.C. for Dean. So I started on the East Coast with Dean and Deluca. And at that time, wine was really new for the East Coast. And it had been around on the West Coast for Dean and Deluca. The St. Helena store had been around probably for at least 5-6 years at that point. and I was about 2 years old on the East Coast, and it was sink or swim. I started in Georgetown, and I was like, okay, here's your wine hall. And I'm like, I was like, is there any training? And they're like looking like, yeah, no, like, here you go.
Google.
And the one thing they said was, oh, and by the way, we're all California. We only do California wine. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, that's the one region I didn't know. And I didn't know any region, but I really didn't know California. And so I was like, it's going to be interesting. So I jokingly, and I said this to somebody earlier today, because they asked me, they're like, how did you get all your knowledge? And I said, I will tell you, it was like having the $1 million education that I don't even think I could have had I not had the experiences I had. Mm-hmm. And that was from like just being around like incredibly talented winemakers, viticulturists, vintners, mentors, colleagues that, and I tend to have a pretty good memory. So it's like, you tell me a story once, I'll remember it. Mm-hmm. And it was just, everybody taught me. It wasn't like just one person, it was everybody. You know, it's like, you know, I think about like these instances, you know, like I think about the first time I met Vince Toffanelli, and like I was like literally 22 years old, and Dave Finney had just started The Prisoner, and like, but then I could go up and down the valley, you know, east, west, north, south, and like everybody has touched me in some way that has helped kind of given me that footprint of wine knowledge that I have today.
And you're so immersed in it that you can't
it's
help
incredible.
it just so cool.
Yeah,
Right?
I can't even. It really is. It's so cool. It's a one of a kind education that I had. I will say that.
And that's probably cultivated all these relationships
correct,
you have for today.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
K Laz. So we kind of jumped the gun here when we started asking all about K Laz without actually asking you, like, when did you start? What's your model?
So we start. So I started K Laz. We sold Dean and Deluca at the end of 14, and the writing was kind of on the wall. And there was a certain point where I said to Leslie, like, this is the time. Like, you're involved. At that time, he was involved with press. He started press years before that. He had bought Oakville Grocery. He was, you know, really working on Rudd, Edge Hill. I mean, he was just, his hands were involved with everything. Distillery 209, the gin distillery in San Francisco, he started. And it was one of these things I was like, and, you know, he kept saying, he was like, I really might sell this. I said, you absolutely should. I said, because you are so involved with so many things, and, you know, it wouldn't be a bad thing. And so he sold to our licensee from Thailand at the end of 14. I had done a lot of business with them in Thailand and Bangkok. And I was excited for what might be to come, but I also knew, I was like, this might be a problem. So
it did change a lot, didn't it?
Yeah, and it was a really tragic, because I was with the company ultimately for 12 years, and I was kind of like, I had done a lot to build that brand internationally from a business standpoint, domestically for wine. I had started corporate partnerships. I, you know, formed partnerships with Lexus, the car company, with Fairmont Hotels, And so needless to say, when in 14 he sold, my mom was also diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. And at the time, all my photography was at the different wine halls throughout the Dean and Delucas. And I asked Leslie, I said, you know, I would think, like, what do you think, like, if they sell, which they probably would never sell, but if any of the photography is sold, do you think we could take the proceeds and put it towards, like, give it to Alzheimer's Association? And he was like, let me think about that. And he was heavily, he's been a huge supporter of child obesity and, you know, the health and wellness of children and stuff. And that's kind of been his foundation's mantra. And I was like, yeah, this isn't, I knew, like, I was like, this is going to be kind of reaching for him. So when we sold Dean and Deluca end of 14, going to 15, I knew that I was going to probably do something with the connections I was really fortunate to have grown through, from the mailing list perspective, from the client perspective, but then also from the winery perspective. I was sitting in this seat where I'm like, I have the keys to the kingdom, and it's almost irresponsible of me not to do something to, like, make an impact for something that I really believe in, which was for Alzheimer's, for research and dementia, for Alzheimer's research and dementia. And so then I basically was like, okay, I'm leaving the company. And then I was hosting a tasting. It was a spring release tasting at the St. Helena store. It was a killer tasting. I kind of treated it as the spring release tasting / my own going away party. And I was like, there's like 30 like incredible vintners and like everyone's pouring. And that was like my like last day with the company. And then I LLC'd like the following week and took a killer trip to France and had an awesome 2 weeks off. And then I started K Laz like going into it. But I was really in a good situation because of the relationships. And I was just at lunch with some clients earlier and I said, you know, what really the test when we get these challenges in our lifetime, and I hope to God we never go through a pandemic in our lifetime again, but the test for companies when you go through such a challenging time, like, you know, the recession, like the pandemic, it tests your relationships and it really shows the strength and the loyalty of who you know and your connections. And so I will say, like, we were really, really fortunate with the pandemic. We were really, really fortunate with, you know, the recession in 7 and 8. But it's also like, obviously, how did we deal with that? How do we evolve as a company? You know, when I left Dean and Deluca, I was like, you know, my first thought was this business that I start will not make it if I don't have the relationships with the wineries, right? And that was almost more important than the relationships with our mailing list, because I'm like, if we don't have the wine at that level that I was used to having for clientele, if we don't have that, we don't have a business, you know? And so we sent a great letter, and it was from Dean and Deluca, and it was from Laz Wine Collection, and and the only reason why I named it Laz Wine Collection was because I couldn't think of another name that quickly, because we had to get that letter out, and I was like, no one's used my name, and it's my own, and so we'll just go with that. So, you know, we sent a letter out, and it was like, this is what's happening with Dean and Deluca, this is what's happening with Kerri. You know, Laz is going to be the new business going forward, and it was sent out to all the wineries, and it was sent out to all the mailing lists, and it was a huge gift that Dean and Deluca gave me that I was able to kind of carve that DTC private client division that I had worked so hard to build, really for myself.
That's awesome.
You know,
and all those folks that had enjoyed your lists and your mailers got to stay with you and didn't lose, because I'm sure. And
it was it was like 1 week there was an email offering, and the following week there was an email offering, and one was from Dean and Deluca the week before, and the following week it was Laz. So it was kind of like, it was the startup, but I jokingly said it was the startup with like 12 years on its back.
I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Because some companies would do, was it a non-compete?
NDA,
like,
100%.
Like in contracts like that, I'm sure we've all signed. Like I've signed like a non-compete. So for them to say, think we appreciate you, here's your.
And if I had left any earlier, like, that wouldn't have happened. It was like inadvertently playing the long game without even realizing it, you know, and it was one of these things where they said, like, this business doesn't exist without you. So you are the name, you are the relationship that built this, you know, division. So it was pretty cool.
So what are some of your favorite brands that you represent?
Oh,
that's
so
probably
many.
impossible.
Where do we go?
Name your favorite.
I was gonna say, you
it's like, what's your favorite?
So you're doing a tasting of 5 of your favorites from Napa.
So, you know, I really, for Napa, I think there are some, I love where California's, I love where it's gone. I love where it is now, how it's arrived. And, you know, when I first started in the business, and that was probably, I really started getting into this in probably 2004, right? So there was a lot happening even before I started. It's not like, you know, when I started, you know, we were starting at like, you know, ground zero. But what I've seen in the last couple decades is this incredible growth of, I think we've seen more brands come to the table in those last couple decades than we've seen ever before. But more importantly, I think we've seen this incredible growth of quality. And I always, and I don't know if this is even the right thing to do, it in my mind, I attribute that to better farming. And I think farming at the end of the day is going to always kind of have it's going to have that edge over wine production. You know, and everybody looks to the winemakers, and we look, you know, when we think about a story about a new wine or a new brand coming out, we always look to who's making the wine and da. But really what it comes down to is like farming. Like, what's going on with the farming? Because, you know, we always say you cannot make a great wine out of good fruit. Like, you can make a great wine, great fruit, but you got to have the fruit. And so I think the farming and the technology with farming, I think what's happening, how we kind of treat the ground now, how we're going more into this idea of like what you put into the ground is what you get out of the ground. I think that has a lot to do with the quality. So I think the quality has increased so much in the last couple of decades. So we've seen more brands. There's been a huge proliferation of brands, but I think we've seen great quality, and that's amazing. And it's just at the end of the day, for the consumer, it's just even better. It's like, so yeah, I mean, you don't have to pick out of like 10, you can pick out of 50, you know? It's more interesting, I think. So I don't really have a favorite brand, to be honest. I think there are some wines that I like, the wineries that have stayed relevant through the years, but all these new guys coming and all the, the flash and the, new properties and da-da-da. I like the wineries that have stayed really relevant through those years. I think that's a testament to what they do. And I think that, to me, is more interesting. So, I mean, looking around the tasting room, I mean, I could look at them and say, like, I think Brian's been doing it well for a long time. I think, what's that one up there? Screaming Eagle. Screaming Eagle's been doing it for a while. They've been doing well too.
I mean,
but no, I think like, the old guard wineries that stay relevant through year and year, and old guard, I always kind of say pre-2000. I just like put a number to that. I like putting numbers to things, but like, the Colgans, the Bryants, the Eagles, the Harlans, those guys, the Sloans. I mean, all those guys, I mean, like, they have stayed, the Arajos that are now Islay, like, they're really, they're great estates, and it's great that all these new brands have come in, but they've really kept a presence, and I think it's hard to do, and I think it's great that they're doing it.
Nice.
Okay, this question might be easier then.
Yeah.
Dinner in the Valley.
Oh, such a good
Where
question.
are you going? What are you ordering? What are you drinking with it?
That might be my favorite question. So, when I meet people, I'm like, I don't even care what they've been drinking. I'm like, where did you go eat?
Yes.
I'm like, that's more important.
Yep.
I love food. Food kind of has a slight edge of my heart. But, so if I were coming to the Valley and I'm like, okay, one night in, what am I going to do? That'd be really hard. I can tell you, I like Bouchon. I like what's happening in Bouchon. I think there's a really good consistency there. I might be partial to it because I can walk to it, like, it's right down the street.
But it's delicious.
Stone's throw.
It's so good.
And I like the consistency of it. But I think I also like everybody who works there. Like, it's very familial to me, and I like that. Like, I feel like I'm at Cheers had the bar, and like I feel like Bouchon's like my Cheers. Like, I go down and like I like that everyone's like, "Hey, Kerri." It's like I'm like the norm of Cheers, I guess, or of Bouchon, and I like that familiarity. But I think what Press is doing is great. I think they veered left and went from a steakhouse to like something totally different. They took a chance and it's actually working. I like that. I like certain things at certain places, right? So like I'm really happy getting the Oysters Rockefeller at Cole's Chop House because I really miss it because I used to always go to Cindy's and get the Oysters Bingo and then they don't have it anymore, right? I think I've had every French onion soup everywhere, and Angel I think has the best French onion soup right now. I've had every burger in the Valley, and I think if you want to do like the double thing, which is kind of trendy right now, like the two little skinnies, Charter Oak does a really great job. If you want to have like a fatty, I think I actually like Cook's a lot. I think they're doing a great job with their burger. So it's kind of like spot specific, and it's like, what do I feel like at the end of the day? That's really what it is.
Very nice.
Oh, look. We have
a guest.
We have an audience.
Oh,
we're getting so popular.
I think he wants to come in. Do you know him?
We just got married a couple months ago.
Oh.
So. I kind of know him.
You've hung out a few times.
Yeah,
it's getting a little serious.
I actually thought he had our dog. That's why I was like, oh, Ramsey. No, Ramsey's not there.
Bring him in.
He let Ramsey
he can join.
No, he can sit out there. He's cool. He can hang.
Well, I have a few more logs to kind of finish this out.
Yes.
This is all happened Thursday, September 29th, current year. Reported people changing and having coffee inside two RVs near Adams Allen, and officers contacted the people who were on a road trip and had pulled over to rest. They were finishing up and getting ready to leave. They were advised to go to look for campgrounds.
Not bad.
Okay. At 6:40 at night, someone appeared to be trying to break into a car with a coat hanger on Childs Avenue. Police contacted the person. It was his wife who had locked the keys in the car.
Wow. Diligent.
And then last one, police were asked to check on a house with its front door wide open near Spring Stockton. The homeowner was just letting some fresh air in.
Yeah, it's like, don't call a Poe over some fresh air.
I do that all the time.
Over fresh air.
I mean, Jesus.
Here's one that would never happen on your street,
What?
Kerri. September 15th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Report of a neglected dog on Allen Avenue. There would never be a neglected dog on Mitchell, let me tell you.
No, I would take
that's
all the
sweet.
dogs in.
That's really sweet.
Or there was a caller concerned about 2 young girls riding an ATV and going out into traffic on Main Street. That's fun.
You know what I think really kind of epitomizes St. Helena, and this is like ending on a high note, is that there was a report on that busy, was that busy
That's
Sunday again?
Yeah.
Jesus. No, I think it was Saturday. No, it was Sunday. That busy day on Sunday. You guys are going to figure out what that was about. But there was a report of a dog with a leg problem near Madrona Allen. And then the dog was taken to the vet for evaluation. I think it's incredible that somebody went outside or they looked out their window and they saw a dog like kind of limping, I guess. And they're like, this is a problem and I need to call for him to get help or her to get help.
Especially
I mean,
on a
that
Sunday.
says a lot.
Yeah.
That means they had to go to the emergency vet.
Right.
Dr.
That
Gold,
means Dr.
bring him in.
Dr.
Dr.
Gold had to leave Farmside to go deal with the dog.
Yeah.
Just kidding. He's he's Ramsey's vet. Trust me. I love Dr. Gold. I just saw him earlier. I love that vet. But but the fact that like there was a dog who had a leg problem, and they wanted to help that dog. That's like incredible.
That's very cool.
In most places, like
They
a
just
dog
ignore
has a
it.
problem, it's like deal. Like, sorry, you look like you have a problem. Like, okay, and you keep driving, But the fact that like
Really
somebody
safely,
took
yeah.
the time to actually try to and really, take care of that dog who had a leg problem, like that's
It's a
really
special spot.
that's sweet. And I think it's like it says a lot about where we live and that
The special people.
yeah,
I love
totally.
it. I love it.
Cool. Well, tell
Okay,
us
thank you.
how we can join your mailing list.
Well, first of all, how do we get K Laz wine? Because
Yes.
you make
I
your
know, I
own
feel
wine,
awful
too.
because so there is also this very small company that I also have, and like we're drinking like Shared Notes and I'm like, oh yeah, that wine,
The one you do.
yeah, the one that I have.
Give us the 2-minute version on the K Laz.
So Laz, I'm really psyched. So that was really sweet about the 14 vintage. I get that now. Yeah. So 14 was the first vintage. My winemaker, I just think is incredible. Celia Welsh, she makes great
of
wines.
course. Mhm.
And she's an incredible winemaker, and I always say it's not because she makes my wine. She was already incredible. I was lucky to have her start working with me. So 14 was the first vintage, and it was one of these things that I started, and I was like, it was all hypothetical. Like if I started my own brand, and it's a small brand, will never be more than like 4 barrels. But I was like, if I started my brand, who would I want to work with, and how would I go down this road? And there were 2 winemakers I really wanted to work with at the time, and it was Celia Welsh or it was Brad Grimes. And Brad Grimes makes A Brew, which I think is phenomenal. I happened to meet with Celia first. I think I caught her on a good day. I always tell her that. I was like, so I know you're cutting back on a lot of your projects. She really stopped working. She kind of cut back on some clients just because she just wanted to concentrate more with her own wine, Cora, and then just not, she had nothing left to prove at that point. I mean, she's like at the pinnacle of her career. And I think she wanted to take a breath. And I said, but I was wondering if you wanted to work with me on like a very small project. It'll never be big, I swear to God. And she was like, sure. She said, and it was my hand guy, she said, sure, why not? That's exactly what she said. She laughed. She's like, no, I was so excited. I'm like, I don't know if you're excited. Like, I didn't say excited on your face, but I saw like, it was almost like I caught her like on like this like weak moment. It's just like, all right. Anyway, so 14 was our first vintage, and yeah, I'm really happy with it. I think she has incredible, wine is very textural, and we always think about like what makes a wine. To me, it's very much what I like about Celia's winemaker, and I get it with all the wines she makes from Kiever. She makes Kiever, Cora, Scarecrow, Lindstrom, and Rewa, great wine down in Coombsville. But what I really like about her style is that the tannins are really integrated, and I think that's what I like. And I think from a textural standpoint, I really like that kind of wine. And yeah, so I'm happy with it. I'm happy with what we're doing. We work with a couple of small growers that, I wouldn't have had access to if I had done it on my own. I probably would have been put on a wait list. So working with her allowed us access, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
So.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. And so where can we get that, and how can we
So
set
I'm
up
going to give you a
tastings?
bottle because I really feel badly that we didn't open one. So we will have a bottle, or I will give you guys a bottle to enjoy. And we're getting ready to release our 18 at some point in the next week or 3 weeks probably. We make a 20 vintage, so and we're not really. I'm not in a rush, and I have to make up for that lack of 20. So, but we are going to release the 18. We've been bottle aging the 18 a little bit longer. The wine, like the 17 vintage, it was hard when it first came out. I was like, I don't love this wine. I liked it, but I did not love it, and it took a while for that wine to come around. It was about probably 6 months later that I actually liked it, and we didn't even use it for tastings for the first 6 months of bottling. So we bottled in May, and I actually didn't really start liking that until December. So basically, we have that luxury. It's really hard for wineries that make a lot more wine. It would be a big cash flow decision, fortunately for us, and for me though, making a couple barrels, it's okay, it's okay that we didn't make a 20, but it's hard for a lot of wineries to miss a vintage like that.
Yeah,
for
sure.
So
nice. And then to come visit you here in Yountville.
Absolutely.
How do we do that?
You're coming. Or you're here.
You're here. You made it.
So you're coming and you're here, and then you can come again.
Cool.
Absolutely. So so on our website, so I think it's klazwine.com. We keep it simple around here. On the website, you can request a tasting time. And we customize every tasting, and it sounds really kind of weird, what does that mean? But we've hosted thousands of tastings, so we've never done the same tasting lineup.
I love that.
Ever.
That's cool.
More than once. Yeah.
You talk to the people about what they're into, what they like.
So ahead of time, we always ask what winery mailing list are you actively on. We don't care. I just joined 50 mailing lists today. It's what are you actively interested in? Where are you visiting? Varietally, what are you interested in? Are you into whites? If so, do you like fuller or drier style, like the shared notes? Do you want to taste Pinots? Are you into cab blends only? So, because really, we're not trying to recreate anyone's palate. All we want to know is where are you? If you tell me you're visiting XYZ wineries, we have a very quick sense of what you like, and then we can kind of branch out a little bit, but we don't want to be redundant. If you're visiting, pick a winery, we don't want to pour that wine, but we have a real quick sense of what you like. So that's where, today we hosted a Pinot Chard tasting only. It was just Pinots and Chards, and it was great because they said, we have more than enough Cabernet. It's well, we're really happy not to share a Cabernet with you then, so we're just going to pour some killer Chards and Pinots for you, and it worked out great. And, especially if you're coming to the Valley, and you really like Pinots and Chards, and there aren't a ton of Pinots and Chards out here, so it's we'll bring the coast to you. We'll bring Anderson Valley or Sonoma Coast or San Lucia, whatever it is, we'll bring it to you. So that's been our niche, is that we really, and then we get a lot of repeat guests, and that's the most important thing. The press has been great, but what we love is kind of the repeat and, the word of mouth referrals, and guests coming back and wine friends coming back because they know they're going to we already know what they tasted and what they liked, so then we can tweak it one more over. Yeah. So
well, like Chris said, you're going to get the 911 bump. So
at least
I hope you're
oh
ready.
my God, I'm psyched.
Be ready for this.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be a part of
storming
this.
down the main street.
No, I'm
Right
so
down
happy that this worked out. I really I'm glad because we had talked about this it's been probably at least a month now, I guess, maybe 2 months. 3 months.
Well, harvest got in the way. It got
so this was August actually.
It got a little
sticky. It's been a bit, but I'm really happy that we finally connected.
Nice.
And you guys are always welcome here.
Cool.
Well, thank you.
So
Cheers to
fun.
Marcus for linking us up.
Hey Marcus, thanks.
I know.
And Kerri, thank you for your time.
Cool. Cheers. Thank
All right.
you.
Cheers.
Yay.
Well, what did you think about your personalized wine podcast experience with Kerrin?
I think every time now I have friends into town wine tasting, I know where we're going to be going.
Send them to Kerrin.
It's amazing.
It's really cool. Great spot. Easy to go to a bunch of other restaurants and events down in Yountville.
Quality wine and people, which are my favorite things.
I don't think you could say it any better.
Awesome. Well, ta-ta.
Thanks, y'all.
You enjoy your evening and be safe.